back to Success Mashup Radio, and I've got Rick Jones. He's the managing partner of Goldberg Jones Attorney, and he's been doing this for 17 years, basically been focusing on divorce for men. And Rick Jones is... they've got offices in Seattle, Portland, and San Diego, focusing their practice on divorce for men and protecting fathers' rights. Goldberg Jones has been featured in the Wall Street Journal and has been nominated as one of Seattle's top 100 companies to work for, which is pretty cool, in 2013. And Rick is also a regular contributor on several local radio shows, and he also hosts the Divorce for Men podcast. So welcome to the show, Rick.
Thanks, Keith. Glad to be here.
Yeah, thanks a lot for coming on. I appreciate it. I know this is probably kind of a touchy topic for a lot of people, so you guys probably, it's probably sometimes kind of tough to, getting people in that stage of their life where there's probably a lot of frustration and stuff, so I'm glad you're coming on to hopefully answer some questions that people may have if they're in that situation or maybe soon.
You bet. You bet. Now, divorce is certainly one of the most important things somebody will ever go through, and with 50% of marriages ending in divorce, the odds are, unfortunately, relatively high that you'll need somebody like my services.
Right, exactly. Okay, so tell me, I guess, you obviously, your phone number is 1-800-DIVORCE, but you're all about, when you go to your website, it's all about men. You focus on helping men get through divorce, and I love that because you're obviously, I don't like businesses that are real generalized. I love businesses that are very, very focused on a specific target because I know that they're probably the best at that specific kind of niche. Sure. So I guess first of all, how did you guys come out to be, and what brought you guys to be so focused on men?
Well, very much what you just described, which is we recognized a need here in the Puget Sound community, which is where we started before expanding to the other offices. My business partner, Bill Goldberg, and I, both being attorneys, recognized a need, saw a comparable firm that existed in Detroit that was just doing wonders for their client, and we decided to really match that and somewhat imitate it here in Seattle. And from there, the growth really has spoken for itself. We now have 10 attorneys in the Seattle office, approximately 30 attorneys overall, all kept very, very busy by clients that are in need of our services.
Gotcha. Okay, so when it comes to, speaking of those services, what are some of the biggest mistakes people make when it comes to, I can't even imagine, when it comes to going through a divorce?
Sure. Well, the biggest mistake men make is doing nothing. They don't educate themselves, they stick their head in the sand, and they just simply hope it all goes away, because going through a divorce is, just like you said, one of the most frustrating things you can ever go through. And so it's almost, it's stereotyping certainly, but it's almost a male personality just to wish it away, and unfortunately it's not going to go away without our help.
Right, especially if you've got, alimony, you've got the kid situation, you've got, so I used to be an airline pilot, so I remember just story after stories of men that basically, they make half of what they used to make because, they've been through a couple different wives, and
sure.
It's kind of an airline thing, where it's back in the day, and it talks about just people that have been raked over the coals, and going through a divorce, not doing the right thing. And I know because I've spoken to people too over the years that have actually had a decent experience going through it because they set things up the right way, kind of from the beginning.
Well, the key comes back to education. As long as both sides, and presumably both attorneys, know what they're doing, then it's really about trying to craft a fair and equitable settlement for both parties, and especially when children are involved, to craft a parenting plan that recognizes the best interest of the children. So if everybody does their job, and if the guys that we represent, or the guys that we don't represent, I should say, because they haven't come to us, if they can keep their head out of the sand and allow us to watch their back, all will be well.
Okay. So, what would be like the number one, or maybe the top 2 or 3 pieces of advice that you would give to somebody that's thinking about going through a divorce, or right smack in the middle of it?
Well, let's start with somebody that's about to go through a divorce, and that's pick up the phone and call us specifically. But the important part there is to start the dialogue and ask questions. you may think you know the answer, but the odds are you probably don't. And there's something just sort of therapeutic, almost cathartic about just getting it out on the table. It now becomes a discussion topic. It doesn't need to be swept under the table. And with those questions, we can provide answers, and it takes some of the mystery away. It's kind of like opening up the closet and making sure that the boogeyman isn't really there.
Yeah, I bet you guys get people walking in the door. I can just picture it, because walking in with they're slumping down a little bit, and then when they walk out, they're probably feeling like there's this huge weight lifted.
You nailed it. It's very empowering. It's very empowering.
Yeah, I know that feeling in other areas, where you get that out there, and then all of a sudden they walk out of there knowing they have a plan.
That's right.
And it's like, I'm really into kind of getting more done, and things that are in the back of your mind and your subconscious mind. They create a lot of stress. And I know that's something it's even just a hidden benefit from.
No, that's exactly it too.
Yeah. So very interesting. Okay, so what what's the number one thing that men need to know, I guess, when facing divorce then?
Well, ultimately, and we keep coming back to somewhat of the same answer, because it would be the answer I give to almost everybody, is that there is a process. Educate yourself to the process. Be able to have a plan. Execute the plan, and it's really one foot in front of the other. Unfortunately, everybody's plan is going to be a little bit different. Every person we talk to, I've never seen the same divorce facts. Some men that call us have custody issues that are going to be the main focal point, seeking custody, or perhaps they're being denied custody. So we're on offense sometimes, we're on defense another. That's custody. We have child support that goes hand in hand with that really needs sort of a keen eye and somebody that's very data-oriented and specific. And then, of course, the rest of the issues are all financial issues. It's dividing up assets and liabilities. It's the spousal maintenance, like the word alimony that you mentioned before. A lot of people don't realize that their pension and retirement is up for grabs. If you're a business owner, perhaps even business equity of a business that you created, potentially even before marriage. So there's all these potential pitfalls that we are not only educated, but experienced and practiced in helping you out with.
Okay, do you ever get a guy that calls you up or comes in or goes to your website that they're going through the divorce, they've been going through it for a while, and they're either not using an attorney, which probably isn't super common, maybe it is, or they're using their family attorney that they use for everything, that they use for their taxes and all that stuff. How often do you guys come in as to kind of
more frequently? Well, perhaps as frequently as you could imagine, which is a lot. My business partner, as a matter of fact, is known for saying that I've never told somebody you've called me too early. I've told many you've called me too late. They call afterwards and they want to tell us the story about how they feel railroaded, and it's tough because I believe I'm the same flesh and blood they are, and my answer has to be, I wish we could have helped you, but it's too late. And so that's why we don't want somebody to wait until too late. Now, sometimes when it's in midstream, certainly respectful of the fact if they're being represented by somebody, perhaps they just don't understand. Perhaps the attorney hasn't been as communicative with them as they would like. So I don't immediately assume that there's some sort of fault with their representation, but I am absolutely willing to listen to them and have them tell me circumstances on the phone, and I'll also tell them straight out that they got one shot at this. So to the extent that they want a second opinion, we'll be happy to give it to them.
Yeah, one shot, and it could last 20 years or 50 years, depending on the repercussions of the lifetime. Right, exactly, because of the financial repercussions. Okay, so I noticed online that there's an interesting fact. The marriage rate in the U.S. is declining, but demand for law or like family law services, like divorce services, is still strong, I believe. So how come?
What's going on with that? It was kind of interesting to see that myself, and then we start putting two and two together and talking amongst ourselves as colleagues. And what we're seeing a lot more of is custody issues, but that weren't the fruit of a marriage. In other words, outside of a marriage. And boy, it opens up a whole can of worms. The custody issues definitely are as significant and involved and complex as any other during a marriage. You aren't dealing with some of the other financial issues, though.
Gotcha, right, exactly. The parenting plan and all those types of things. So, okay, so what is your opinion on the whole the marriage decline rate?
Well, I think what's happening is it's definitely a bit of a change in our culture, and let's call it the multitasking culture, the social media culture. But I think there's a recognition that the world out there is real large, and that some of the social stigma of having a child outside of marriage doesn't exist in the same way that it might have 20 or 30 years ago. So I think it's a trend that you're likely to see more of.
Gotcha. Okay, so I know there's got to be people out there listening, and if you're watching this at a later date, what would be the best course of action for somebody to do? How do they get a hold of you guys for, obviously, and if somebody's going through a divorce, talk to these guys. This is what they specialize in. They've been doing this for 17 years.
17 years. The first step would be to take a look at our website. It's goldbergjones.com, and there's several answers that we can be able to provide in an FAQ section, and you can just generally poke around. But lastly, call us. Call 1-800-DIVORCE, and we'll answer your phone questions at no charge.
Very cool. So no charge, 1-800-DIVORCE. Go to their website. They got free, great information on there. They do a good job of content creation and helping people, educating people on what they do. So, all right, thanks a lot for joining us. We're going to be back next week with Success Mashup Radio.
Views expressed on the preceding program are those of the hosts, guests, and callers, and are not necessarily those of this station, its management, or other advertisers. Contests mentioned during this program are the responsibility of the host of this program, and not of the station, its management, or other advertisers.